Okay. Uh, as mentioned, my name is Andrew Romer. I'm the head of the application software team here at Tritium. I've been here for about 4.5 years now, and throughout a lot of that time, my team's been working on MyTritium and the features in there, and it's constantly evolving, and we're pretty excited about where it's up to now, and very much looking forward to where it's heading into the future. So, MyTritium is essentially your command center for managing your charging infrastructure. It's an asset management system, and it's a single pane of glass covering all of your interactions with Tritium. So today we'll show you a selection of its features. We're going to be logging in as a demo user here for an imaginary customer shop point that we've set up that's got a number of chargers connected to it. They're kind of real chargers out in the field with real data, but they've been anonymized. And just be aware that we're running this on our test infrastructure, which runs a little slower than our production environment, but we'll see how we go. All right, so you get to it at mytritium.com. Here's the landing page once you log in. I'll jump to my profile first. This is where you can see your own details, any licenses you might have, where you can also log out again, because we don't have log out off the main menu. And then this is a place where you can set your time zone. So all of the data and telemetry data we receive from the charger all gets stored on our servers in UTC. So if you're wanting to see any of those times on charts and reports and things like that recorded in your own time zone, that's where you can set it here, and that'll reflect up in the top left corner here under the logo as to which time you're having. So as you can see at the moment, it's a little after 11 p.m. here in Brisbane. And you can opt in for insights, and I'll talk to the cases bit a little bit later as we get into it. Okay, so in MyTritium, everything is sort of in a hierarchy of accounts, and accounts have sites and sites have chargers. And here you can see we're logged in as ShopPoint Global, which is a parent account, and there's 3 child accounts, ShopPoint Australia, UK, USA, and we can see how many assets and sites each of those have got. And then if I click on roles, there's no roles here because our account is not performing a role for any other customer or account, but you can see we've got one partner in here, which is Field Advantages, is a preferred service agent on one of our sites. We can also manage our users here, see licenses and things like that. I'm going to come back to those later on. I'll just click on config. This is where you can set some basic settings at account level for your account, and this will be expanding over time as we start being able to set a whole lot of production values. So if you're going to be having new charges ordered, you'll be able to set a lot of what you want those initial settings to be done in here as well. One that I wanted to point out is this automatic software update. So this is set to yes by default to recommended releases, which is once our charger software has been thoroughly tested, been through beta phase, and then is released for general distribution. You could say, I want all my chargers to run on the latest beta release if you want, or say, no, please don't update them automatically. But yes is by default, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on when we drill in a bit lower. So that's account level. If I dig into sites now, we can see here that this is the site view, and we're viewing all of the sites for all of the children. So this one's ShopPoint AU and this one is ShopPoint USA. I can change which account I'm looking at always from the top here if I have access to multiple accounts. If I don't, if I'm only belonging to a singular account, then you won't see this icon, and this would just be the account name. Here you can see it's got this all after it because I've got access to my children as well as my own account. So my own account of ShopPoint Global that I'm logged in as has got a single site. ShopPoint USA has got 4 sites, and so if I go to ShopPoint UK, we can see there's 2 sites there. This is the list view of the sites with some basic filtering at the top, so I can find sites just where there's a vehicle charging or where there might be a charger in an error state. And I can view it also in a grid view to fit more in, and then we've also got, a map view where it shows the two sites on the map. And if I, switch that to, say, ShotPoint USA, we'll see where we've got the sites across the USA as well. So let's jump back to list view for a sec. And if I drill into a site here, you can see that once it gets into this detail page, so here's the detail view for a site. So we've got the location information with a lat long that'll take us to the maps, and we can see what state all of the connectors on the chargers are on this site. So at the moment, for this site, they're all just in an idle state right now. None of them are charging, none of them in an error state, none of them are not reporting to us. And then there's some basic 7-day usage summary at a site level for how the whole site is. And if we had a service agent on this site, we could have them attached here. And like I mentioned before about software updates at account level, you can override that at a site level here. So if you had a particular site that was your testbed site, you could say, well, I want this site to always be having the latest beta software installed on the chargers here, while the rest of my fleet is set to the recommended release, things like that. You can see this one is saying it's the recommended releases, but that's inherited from the account level. Okay, so if I jump across to chargers, it's not strictly speaking just chargers, it's all the devices we have on the site. So where we have some distributed systems, you'll also see rectification units, power units, things like that as well that might be here. And you can see on this site, one of these chargers, there's one module out there, so it's only giving 125 max. And so here are all the chargers that we have on the site, and we'll get into the details of a charger when we jump into chargers in a sec. I'll just skip across a few of these other bits. If I'm viewing the vehicle view, let me change it to sites, because then I'll give you a site where there's at least a vehicle charging. So if we're on this this charger view, and then I jump to the vehicle view, once these come up, here's like almost like an overhead car park view, and you can see this connector on this RTM is currently charging, and the vehicle's at 66% state of charge. So we've got that view at site level, and I'll show you something a little bit similar when we get to charges. And you can see the state of charge here if on is at 66% as well. So for a site, we also have reporting. Here's 7-day, you can view 30-day or 90-day, number of different things. This is energy delivered, charge sessions with some summary data underneath for that whole period. And I can also view like the availability or utilization for this particular site over that period. And I can export that summary data as well. And I think for the charge sessions, you can export detailed information as well. So if I'm exporting summary information, it's going to be all of this that's on the chart. If I do export detailed, it will be every single one of the charge sessions that form this. So, there's 46 charge sessions on this day, plus all these across here. You would get a full list of all of those on the detailed export. If I jump onto service, this is showing any support request cases that have been raised for any charger that is on this site. So it's the accumulation of support requests related to chargers on this site. And the last thing is this RF survey. So that's where generally done when a new site is created and we want to get a representative feel for what the comms is going to be like from the site. So if you go in and create one of these surveys, you take a phone or another piece of equipment and can test all the different bands, so we get a feel for how strong the mobile signal is going to be to know whether we're going to have good connectivity. And I'll show you that in just a sec. So if we dump into chargers now, again, similar to sites in terms of layout, we can select the account at the top from all of the charges that we've got as a parent, or just the charges from a particular child account. So here we've got all of these charges, which site they belong to, the charger name, whether they're in or out of warranty, their serial number, how much power they can currently deliver as max, what software version they're running, and then the state of the connectors. And then over here, this one's got one open case on it at the moment. Similar to sites, but with more filters, we can check for charges that are expected to be reporting data to us. That's what the monitored bit is, whether they're in or out of service, whether we just want to see the charging stations or see the rectifier units as well, in or out of warranty, the state of the connectors, as well as searching by product families or plug types, things like that. And so similar to sites, we've got a grid view and then a teensy-weensy little grid view that just shows the status of the connectors. And so this is helpful with or without showing the accounts or the site names if you wanted to as well. But this view is helpful if you were going to run a network operations center big screen view and you had hundreds or thousands of chargers and you just want to see the whole fleet up there, see if there's any errors popping up, how many are charging. And you can do that in a light theme. Down in the bottom left corner, you can select light theme, dark theme, or a high contrast accessible. And so you could have that up on a big screen. I'll just hide those. And I'll change back to light theme because I don't really like the dark theme. Okay, so if we change back to the list view, which is the most information dense, and we drill into one of these chargers, let's go into this PKM first. For any of our distributed systems, you'll see the charge station and any of its siblings that are connected to the rectifier unit or the power unit, which you can also click on here. And we see any of the last charge sessions, detailed information about the model charger that we've got there and its max power output, what software version it's on, the ability to upgrade the software version here, when we last heard from this charger. And similarly to the site, we can see like the last 7-day usage, but this is for just this particular charger. If I jump back out and jump into that one that was charging the RTM, you can see if it's in a charging state, then we're getting a live feed of the active session that's happening now. And so you'll probably, if we wait 10 seconds, you should see these numbers change. There we go. So that's ticking over. So when MyTritium's receiving 2 streams of data. We get a copy of the OCPP messages that a charge point operator or customer would receive, as well as that we receive an MQTT feed, which has got far more information in it. And we receive a heartbeat about every 10 minutes and a stream of data. Then, as well as when we're charging, we're getting data about every 10 seconds. That gives us some really detailed information about what the charger is doing through that charging session. And I'll show some of that when we get into viewing the telemetry chart. So if I click on that, we have a chart coming here. You can select 2 measurands, vehicle state of charge and vehicle power. I've got selected here at the moment, which will show you that charging curve. You can blow this out to 3 hours or 24 hours or 8 days. This is the zoomed in version. You can see every single little data point here that we're collecting throughout the course of that charge. So you can see the power dropping off as that state of charge is increasing, and that vehicle's currently up to 74%. And you can choose the date or time to track down if you needed to look at a particular charging session that took place, or a particular time of day when the charger might have been showing an anomaly or a status message, etc. And similarly to the telemetry that you can chart, we can also chart the connectivity, the signal strength, or the if I could just take that out to 8 days, we can see what the signal strength has been looking like for the modem in this RTM. And we've got some other measures of signal quality depending on which modem is in the charger as to what they can report. So that's helpful to see. And some of this would have turned up if you'd done a site RF survey on the site prior to putting chargers in. You'd know whether you were going to get enough signal strength to get a good signal from the charger all the time to measure connectivity. So let's jump across to reports now. Similar to sites, we can see charge sessions, energy delivered, utilization, etc., as well as broken out by each connector and a summary for them. And similarly, we can export this summary data or the detailed data. I'll jump across to installation checklist. A bit similar to the RF survey, the installation checklist. These used to be able to be done separately from MyTritium, but we've got them in MyTritium now for completion. And so the installation checklist is all the steps that you would go through to show that the installation was done to spec. And I don't think I'm going to be able to create a new one in here because it requires having a license, and I don't have my RTM installer license, which I'll show you when we get to the training section. So coming into MyTritium is where a field technician will be able to complete an installation checklist or an RF survey. And then in audit, we can see any changes that have taken place to this charger, if there are any modules changed or cables changed, as well as being able to view any status codes that have ever fired on this charger and when, whether we got multiple occurrences of them, how long they lasted, and what the description of them are and which connector it applied to. And also we can view user log if to see who may have touched a particular charger or made changes and things like that. So that's sort of the charger view. So let's jump up to service. We can see for this USA account, I think there might be one open case in here. And so all of our support requests cases are tied to individual chargers. And come on, test. Do it. There we go. We've got one case here. So I'll drill into this case. And you can see that it's tied to this particular Glendale 104 serial number. And so once I drill into that case, I'm actually on the service tab of that particular charger, as if I'd come into the charger and gone to the service tab. So this is the case for that charger. I can edit the case, add any attachments, add a new comment here if I wanted to. And you can see that this yellow star here says that I'm currently following this case, which means that I will be receiving status notifications as changes are made to the case. And if I view everybody that's following the case, currently it's just me, Andrew Demo, but I could add other users from my organization if I needed to, or they could go in here, find the case and add themselves to it if they needed to receive notifications about changes happening to the case. And if there was a status update, then I'd get a little badge appearing over here on this service in the menu as well, showing that there was updated cases for review. And that ability to follow is similar to what you may have glimpsed when we were back in my profile. By default, we're set to follow cases that I create. So if I go and create a case in MyTritium, I'll auto follow that case, which kind of makes sense. I'm the one that created the case. But sometimes that I may not want to do that. I might only be creating cases on behalf of other people in the org that are following up on those cases. So I could choose this to be no for auto following cases. And I can also choose to auto follow cases for my whole account or for any of my children accounts as well. So if I want to always receive notifications for all cases, I can set myself to be following cases for all of those as they get raised. Okay. So sorry if I'm rushing through this a little bit. I hope it's not too fast. We've got a lot to get through. So we'll move on from service to the document library. So here we've got documents, and this is the latest version of any document that we release. So it's always a good place to go if you want to get, say, the latest field service procedure or the latest API spec. And once this comes up, we can see in here the different types of document types we've got. There's a number of how-to guides, and they're being added to over time. We've got an API specification in here for our cases API. So we have an API to allow you to connect your system to our system. Cases is the first one that we've got. There'll be more APIs coming early in the new year, probably starting with price lists, I think. And the spec for that API is there if you're interested in having system communication as well. Let's change to field service procedures. And here's an interesting one here. Replace Chatamo with NAX cable. That might be something that we'd be wanting to do. Probably if you're in North America, less so if you're in Europe or the UK, where we're not really interested in NAX cables because we've got CCS2 like we have in Australia. So here we've got field service procedure for replacing a Chatamo with a NAX cable. If I scroll down off this first page of the tools and things that I would need to perform that, you can see in here that I've got service kit if it was for an RTM, or service kit for a PKM. Let's just copy that, and we'll jump back over here and we'll go to the shop, and by default, we show the critical parts. They're the parts that we recommend, that you keep a certain number of on hand because they're the most likely to need replacement in the field over time. But the shop does have the full list of all parts. Let's search for this. Okay, it doesn't appear in critical, but if I go to all parts, here's our cable replacement kit for Chatamo to a NAX cable. And looks like they might be back ordered at the moment. But if I go and add one of these to my cart, you can see that that's added there. And if I go into the cart, I can see here's my cable. I can increase or decrease the quantity, and I can save it as a quote. I can select that maybe I want to do a pickup from the warehouse, or I can select the delivery address and enter the details. And then I can save it as a quote so that I could go and enter it into my own internal system and get a quote number. And then when I come back into here, I think I've got a couple of quotes that I prepared earlier. I hope so. You can do it. There we go. And yeah, so you can see here's a quote that had already been prepared, and a charge cable replacement kit, and I can add the purchase order, so you could upload the purchase order to it and provide a purchase order number. And I think I might have already created one in here. It's probably just a shop point dummy purchase order, yeah. And then you would be able to place the order or pay for it with credit card. At the moment, there's an issue with the billing account. That's because I don't have this linked to our internal billing system at the moment. But if we did, which is what I would expect your account would look like, then you could place that order, and then it would appear here in orders, and you would see updated status of where that was up to and when the parts were shipped. So we've now added credit cards into there for if you want to just purchase orders up front rather than having them on account. And similarly, we've added credit cards into training as well. So if I jump across to training, so this is where, and I'll just change that to ShopPoint Global because I want to see my training. So here we've got two trainings that I've begun, and I can create a new training for myself or for someone else in my organization if I've got administrative privileges. And so here's an installation training for RTM and one for PKM. You can see on this PKM one that all I've done is I've paid for it, but I haven't done the course materials yet. So if we drill into this, then we should see, come on, there we go. Here's some pre-reading material, and these link back to documents that we've got in our document library. Payment's already been made on this, otherwise there would have been a pay by credit card now button to pay for the installation course. And then I can view the online course materials. So would you like to resume where you left off? And if I say no, should just take me back to the beginning, and it's going to run through the training materials. And then I'll just jump to this top one where I've already completed the training materials. If I get to the end of that successfully, then it'll mark that as complete, and then I can book in for my training. So I go, okay, well, let's book in for a training. There's only one here available that's coming up for an RTM installation. It'll be with Lewis. It's a virtual training, not an in-person one, for the Americas region, and it'll be on the 1st of December. And so I could choose to book that in, and then I would be able to complete the training session virtually, and then Lewis, who would be doing that training, would then mark that off as complete. Then I could do my final assessment. I'd be granted my license, and then that license would show up here in your profile, and you'll be able to see here that I've got just an RT installer license, but I don't yet have my RTM or PKM installation license. And then if I go to accounts, you can see in licenses here, you can view any of the licenses you've got for the whole organization. So I'd be able to see any licenses that are current, and also if I go show all, it'll show any expired licenses as well. And so if there was an expired license, I could just choose to pay to have that renewed and for another year. So while we're in accounts, we'll look at a couple of the other options that are in here as well. Service hours is where you can see the total number of prepaid service hours if you've got out of warranty charges and you may need service for them. Work won't get done on them until there's some prepaid hours there that can be consumed. And as they do, you would see the cases appear here with how many hours were spent resolving those cases for those out of warranty charges. And speaking of warranties, the warranty calendar will show you when a charger might be coming out of warranty. So here for ShopPoint Global, we've got just the one site, and this charger is expiring in January 2026. And I can see it's happens to be on the 26th of January 2026. And if I drill into that, I'll get the list of chargers that are where their warranty is expiring on that day, and then I can link through to that charger if I wanted to. If I'm currently on an SLA, the SLA report would show for all the charges how we performed for that month and whether we missed any of our targets. And in invoices, if I've got any outstanding or open invoices, or if I want to go back and drill into any invoices, I can do that from the invoice section, but I don't think I'm linked to an account in our billing system. All right, so let's look at help and info. A new section that's just about to launch is this insight section that will have a number of different insights that appear depending on what's happening with your charges. And it might be some news information. It might be where we've just released a new feature. It might be if your service hours are getting low. There's going to be a range of different insights coming that will display here, and that'll be launching pretty soon. We also have contact information here if you need to get general help or a sales inquiry, etc. Probably one of the key ones that you'd like to use in this section is the status codes. So this has got the full list of every single status code that our chargers can report, there's a lot, because we have some really, really detailed information about what particular modules and components and things are doing, including the same message for which particular module it might be. So if I've got a PKM with 6 different modules in it, we'll know that that happened on a particular one. And so we'll be expanding this information to include not just a statement about what the description of the status code is, but what next steps might be appropriate if you're wanting to do that sort of first and maybe even second level, support within your own organization. That information will become more available as we've got some new features coming early in the new year to perform better diagnostics and sort of how to go about resolving issues that might turn up. Also in here, we've got the software releases. This in test is going to be way out of date, so we won't pay any attention to the actual content that shows up here. But if you're doing this in production, you'll see all of the software releases, which ones are currently in a testing phase, in a beta phase, which ones are in recommended. So these are kind of all out of order and out of date, but then also be able to drill into the release notes for any particular software version, and you'll see the detailed release notes as well. I think if I click on one of these, I just get the basic information, what were the key features that we added to it, and I can download the release notes for it as a PDF, and I can also download that software bundle if I want to install that to the charger. All right, what have we missed? Dashboard. Dashboard allows you to add a number of widgets. There's a group of widgets here that you can add to your dashboard and then move them around, which gives an overview of sort of your whole fleet, total energy being delivered, CO2 emissions. That CO2 emissions, for anyone that has to report on those sorts of things, you can set at that account level what the CO2 intensity is. I think I've got this set as 0.8, which is just a marker of the grid power that is being served to your chargers. So if you know the intensity value of the grid that you're currently connected to, you can set that at account level. Here, there's 0.8. So those values on that dashboard are effectively a multiplication of this and the energy that was being delivered that estimates the CO2 emissions. And so this config exists on sites as well. So if you've got a particular site that is in a much dirtier area in terms of grid power, or perhaps is being served entirely by renewables, then you can override at site level. And in here, you can see that you could override this with a particular value. So you could set that to 0 or 0.1 instead of 0.8, things like that. And that reflects on the dashboard for CO2 emissions. Okay, I think that was a lot, right? Hopefully that's been helpful. Do we have any questions at this point that you'd like to ask? There might be some in the Q&A. I might hand it back, and I'm happy to sort of drive through anything particular if something comes up that we want to take a closer look at.
Just thank you for that, Andrew. Just the one question. During when you were showing the feature on the shop when the customer places the order, Ben asked an excellent question. He goes, he's not getting any notifications when the order's placed. Obviously, we do that when we do it via the ticket. There's an update with the tracking number, but apparently on the shop, there's nothing there. But I'm sure that's something we're going to look at, right?
There is, yes, because it has been noted that notifications have been a little bit hit or miss. Some people getting too many notifications for some things that we have with cases, some people not getting enough notifications. So we're actually reviewing our whole, and part of it is that internally here at Tritium, we're currently working with a couple of other internal systems. And so in the past, for cases, you used to get notifications coming out of our Salesforce system, and then some coming from MyTritium as well. And so now we have people for orders, some of that notifications being sent by certain individuals and others being sent by systems. And so we're currently consolidating all of that, and notifications are going to get much, much better early in the new year as we improve that. But it's actually just a conversation I was having today around how we show the status of orders. I don't have an order here to show you on the line item. Once the tracking information gets added, you see that in there as well, and the shipping date when you're in here, but we need to be able to send that out as well as those statuses change, and there needs to be a trigger for that. And so we don't have some of that loop back from our billing system once those tracking gets done for a consistent notification to get sent, but that's something we're well aware of and are working hard on at the moment.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew, again. Thank you, everyone.